Today is Thursday, May the 2nd, 2024, and welcome to episode 94 of Rural Reliance with Canny Couple. I'm Julia.
And I'm Aaron.
We're a small homestead family in rural Southwest Virginia that work every single day to be less dependent on outside sources, emerging homesteading and frugality.
Yep.
And one of the big things we have been feeling lately is we are seeing holes in our homesteading processes, systems, and preps.
Yes.
And they're causing us to reevaluate. We want to go through how you identify these, how you identify them as a problem, could be a potential long-term problem, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've just had a lot of things happen lately.
Right, and it showed us some definite big holes that we have to fulfill.
Yes, I would say our homestead processes and systems are 100 times better than what they were a couple years ago.
Definitely.
The house remodel, we planned every detail down to how we use the homestead, how we think about the homestead. I focused on areas that really gave me a lot of stress, which helped a lot.
Yes.
But now we're seeing in action a few issues that we need to really work on. We had a really bad emergency that happened a couple weeks ago.
Yes. I think we mentioned it too.
We did. Well, no, I didn't go into details.
We didn't go into detail, but I had to have staples in the head. So we noticed we had holes in having things to stop the bleeding quickly on hand.
You would tell them what you did?
I don't know if I want to or not, but yes, I will.
It can happen to anybody.
It can. So we were driving the fence post in the garden. I was trying to rush it. I one-handed the fence post while I was one-handing the post driver, and I lost that one, and the post driver fell back onto my head.
Yep.
Because I was trying to speed up the process, which showed us that we had things for stings right out.
Because that is an emergency we knew.
Right, from previous.
I knew I needed to have sting relief. I needed to have the EpiPen, all of that at the door. So I have all of that there. I also have poison ivy wipes. That's another thing we knew we needed to have there. We didn't realize we needed to have emergency, which we've had cuts before, but nothing to this extent.
Nothing with that much blood.
Nothing with that much blood. And I wasn't thinking to wrap it the way they did at the doctor. I will next time, because I never thought to use the stretchy tape. Not really tape. The stretchy binding material, that they use to close it.
So they just wrapped it all the way around my head.
Use that to wrap around the head.
Yeah.
We have plenty of that.
Yeah.
We keep that on hand for poison ivy because it works the best.
It does. It does. Like if you're
does.
trying to, make sure it doesn't go anywhere else, use that to stop it. But we have some good
sterile gauzes. Didn't think to grab those. None of this stuff.
We have some good stuff, but we didn't have it accessible.
Not at hand. So we were using what I had right there, which is a paper towel, then a rag, and went and grabbed what I had. So by working outside, being outside more, doing these things, working in our homestead this year more fully, we're really realizing we need to really look at how we're doing our processes, make sure we're being super efficient in how we do them. Because we are process-driven people. We are systems and process-driven people. How, like Aaron knows, your keys go here every time. I know if I take his keys outside, I know where to put them when I come inside. Or when when I'm at the door.
I was going to say, usually put them in the wrong spot.
But they are either in one or two places.
One or two. Right.
And that's because when you come into the door, you don't want to take your shoes off, so you just throw them beside the refrigerator.
But, we didn't have wallets handy or anything like
cards
that.
Or anything.
And it was trying to get the baby up from the nap while I'm going everywhere, and the mail person's looking at me like I'm about to die.
So we realized
yeah.
we need multiple things. First, we need more emergency wound care right at the door. Because if we're going to have an accident, it's going to be outside. And that's typically where we're going to be using heavy machinery. It's not really in the house like that. It's more outside.
But
The pruners, the shears, the chainsaws, anything like that.
Yeah.
The axes. This was a post-haul driver. You wouldn't think you would bleed from that, but we did.
well, when it tipped all the way over onto your head.
So we realized we need emergency wound care there. We also realized that we need to have an emergency room binder, container, or something to grab at hand.
Something, just because we've said, we've had an urgent care visit and a hospital visit this month. So, hey, we could print off some extra
Insurance
cards, have those handy so we're not always having to find the wallet. Like sometimes I'm bad about
putting his wallet different places.
I am. So
he's gotten a lot better, but
it could have been, hey, where's your wallet?
It could have been anywhere. It could have been
I don't know.
I mean, anywhere in the house. So we also need to make sure we have food for the little one. That's a big thing because the cafeteria was closed to the hospital at 5 o'clock.
At 5 o'clock.
At 5 o'clock. Yep. So there was, we had people who are going to bring her food. That was okay. She'd have been taken care of. But these are just small little things that you don't think about until it happens. And then when because we can have an emergency room visit at any point in time. Yeah. I'm working outside every day right now, just about. So we're constantly outside. We're constantly working. We're constantly pushing for it on the homestead. And this becomes more and more of a possibility the more and more you do.
Right.
So this is how we've noticed we've got some holes. So how are we going to identify more holes and how are we going to fix them?
Hopefully not that way.
Not that way. We're hoping to be proactive rather than reactive. This is us being reactive.
Yeah.
We were on our way home thinking, how do we avoid this rush, this stress again?
It took us probably 20 minutes to get going after the accident happened?
No, it wasn't. Well, it took me like 5 minutes to see what was even happening with the blood. There was so much blood. But it wasn't 15 minutes. It felt like 15 minutes to you, but it wasn't 15 minutes. It might have taken me 5 minutes to get the baby ready and 5 minutes to get everything else together. But it was pretty scary. Okay, so number one thing you need to do, we have to reevaluate our processes. Now, we're not talking about making this a big production, super long or anything like that, but as we do projects and as we do things, we need to look at, are we being efficient with our time? So we noticed this year with our potato patch, we are not being super efficient with our time. We are spending a lot of time getting a lot of grass and a lot of leaves when we should have already have had most of this ready when we were up there. And
as soon as it was planted, we should have had this ready.
Yes. So reevaluating as we're working through it to find better ways to do it and have that process set up. So we gave you the extreme scenario of having emergency room visit and all this, but this is with anything in our homestead. This is a big hole. I don't know if we could cut enough grass to cover our entire potato patch unless we go to the hayfields.
That is true unless it's a warm winter and grass is growing awful tall by that point, because most of the time when we're planting our potatoes, we'll be planting them in March.
Yes.
So having a lot of grass at that time is usually not something that we would have. So the leaves, for example, though, we could have raked up a huge pile of leaves to have ready. I mean, it ain't like we haven't raked up many, in the fall, or even to have in bags like we did for the buckets, for example.
Yeah, and I kind of made a path, and we're going to keep this path clear. I'm going to spend time this summer making sure we have clear paths into the woods for leaf gathering, because we don't really have a great way to go and source leaves for free. We kind of have to use our our garden, and I've kind of made a path that I can just sweep them straight down. But it's still a hard sweep. It's still a lot to do. But our goal is to start this in the fall, not as they're planted and the weeds are growing.
Right. Because then we're rushing to get it done when if we had it all on hand, we wouldn't have been in a rush.
We wouldn't have been in a rush. So that's a hole we realized when we were working through it. Now, I found another crux to this because it works a lot better if you could push them up against the fence and then dump them over. Well, the problem is our fencing now is as tall as me, if not taller.
And then the other areas, it's going to be even taller.
It's going to be even taller, but then you have to rake them down even further, and we don't want to do that. We want to make this as easy as possible. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a fence post right there, and instead of actually fully tying that fencing there, we're going to put it in with wire that I can untwist and twist off, open that fencing up, take the shovel and dump it.
It works.
I thought about this a lot whenever I was doing it.
Because you were like, how is this going to happen next year?
Like, we're not doing this next year. I've got to have a better system because this doesn't work for me. We've learned how to do better rows. The rows have worked really well. So every year as we're doing it, we're reevaluating and finding the areas that were causing us stress and issues before, holes in our processes, and we're fixing those. Yeah. So this was a big hole this year. We knew it was going to be a problem last year. We didn't realize until this year, when the weeds started coming up in the area, just how big of an issue it was going to become. But we took care of it. Got leaves, got grass in there, and if we can get grass up there, that is wonderful and great. But we can't count on that.
Right, unless we're pulling from other areas.
And then it's hard to get it up there.
Right.
It's really hard. Although I came up with an amazing way to carry those buckets of grass up to it. I hooked 6. You can take and loop your bucket handles through a hoe and make sure the end of your hoe is turned up, and you can foxtrot them up the hill. Yep. It works out really well. So look for low cost or no cost solutions to your problems. This is the biggest part of this and being frugal.
This one can be tough.
It can be because, man, I tell you, sometimes it's just easy to go look online for an expensive new toy to make your life easier.
Yes. And you know, from a medical standpoint, maybe you just buy a medical kit. Well, maybe not. Maybe you find those exact things that you're missing and build that medical kit beside the door.
I don't need to. I've got everything we need.
I would say we're probably at 9%. I say there's some still things.
There are some things we need. We've had a few like bumps on the head. Aaron would really like to have that metal tool to press that. They use it for
if you've watched UFC fighting, you know when they're punching each other and they take that piece of metal and to stop it from swelling up there. I've always thought that'd be handy for those type of situations.
And when you have a toddler, you could have those situations. They don't pay attention to where they're running. So things like that. But for the most part, we're using what we have, pulling that, putting it in a place where everybody who needs to know knows. That's the other part of this. Everybody who needs to know knows about it, what's going on, how this process works. If I'm not there, Aaron knows. I can untwist this part of the fence and pull these buckets of leaves over. Right. That's the goal. He might not do it the way I do it. He might not do it perfectly right. But it'll get done good enough to get us through until I can get up there and do what I need to do. And that's what matters. So just a knowledge that's shared across the board. Now, this is something we do like on our homestead because Aaron doesn't have the same preserving knowledge that I have. He doesn't. No. He can use the freeze dryer, but when it came to actually prepping the food, you'd probably be struggling.
Depending on what type it is, yeah. I mean, if just making probably bananas or strawberries or something like that, that you just cut up and put on it, then I'd be okay. But anything more than that, that Like, if I didn't know, like, we won't do blueberries, but for example, if you had to poke them,
grapes, things like that.
stuff like that, I wouldn't necessarily know. Just a few things learned here or there.
Right. So it's just a big hole on ours, and we know it's there. We're trying to find ways around it and ways to make sure we don't experience that hole, but we do know that it's there. But looking for other low cost, no cost expenses, look on Facebook Marketplace if it's workable for you. A lot of people have tons of luck. Tons of luck.
Our area is so expensive on stuff. Maybe you can find some in your area, but I will say our area, it's very tough to find those good things on Facebook Marketplace. Um, like, I even joined, like, one of those groups where you basically, it's like a free group. You don't pay anything type of thing, and it's useless. I mean, in the bigger cities, those things might work more and stuff, because. But out here, everybody hoards stuff in the country.
Well, that and they try to sell it to you for the same cost as new.
Yep.
That's a huge thing in our area. They
It
want to
is.
sell you their used good, their hard used goods
For the same price
for
as
the
a new
same
one.
price as a new one, and you just have to know your process. So, definitely look on Facebook Marketplace, look on Craigslist, wherever you go, to search. Just do your due diligence to look for a good deal and be creative. Think outside the box. I mean,
Yep.
really think, okay, I had this issue like I did with the leaves. How do I get it from here to there and make this really work for us? So it's kind of what we look at. I try to look at everything from a sense, how do I make this as easy for myself? Even if it's a little bit of work up front, how do I make this as easy for myself long term versus short term? So a lot of people say you're putting a lot of effort into getting your garden covered this early. So I have to spend way less effort weeding it later.
Right. This will stop the weeds pretty much throughout the year.
I mean, the weeding
Yep.
is it can be torture, and it's a lot, and it's a big patch. It's not a small patch. It took me 2 days to get it weeded, and that wasn't even fully covered. So we have to look at things in a long-term perspective as well as a short-term perspective. You're looking, for any solution possible. So really just think, search, do research, whatever you can think of to come up with different ways to do it. You want to prioritize your purchases if you do have to make one. This is hard.
And it's something we've struggled with.
We have. But we're getting better. We're getting way better.
We are actively working on, like, a buying list, anything we know we need coming up within the next year,
Or
maybe
longer.
2 years, and putting it on a list so we can say, okay, this month we need this, or this month we don't need any of these, for example.
We have extra room in the budget. Let's
Mhm.
go ahead and invest in this for the homestead.
Right.
Things like that. You also want to make sure you're doing your cost analysis here. Is the cost really going to be worth it for
Yes.
you? This is huge. Don't go getting a cow if it's not really cost effective for you to go get a cow.
Right, especially like if you're having to buy hay, for example, you don't have a place you can source your food for the cow. You don't have your own land to maybe get hay from it or graze on.
Unless
might
you're
not-
wanting a very expensive pet. And a lot of people want that. We're not telling you not to have your very expensive pet, but just understand they're very, very expensive.
Yeah.
And like for us, this is the reason we're not going with the large livestock. We do that cost analysis. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. And I mean, grazing area, we've got, a little, but we would be hurting in the winter if, maybe we could do the tree fodder, but at a certain point it might be tough for that even. So for us, it just didn't make sense. And
The time, the effort,
Right.
and what we would actually get from it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing you have to do. So looking for holes in your homestead, looking for ways to make do. So I'm going to give you an example. One of the things we're looking to do is we're looking to increase our soil productivity, our biodiversity. And one of the ways we're doing that is we're going to make um, David the Good, is that his name?
Yep.
His swamp water stuff. And we've been trying to figure out, what do we put this in that's going to work for us. Our property is not flat. It's hilly. It's difficult terrain to carry things back and forth. And we're having a hard time finding barrels with lids that are reasonably priced.
That's the key. That's the key word right there. Reasonably priced.
So we're actually looking at large, heavy-duty trash cans that have a lid that we could put a cinder block on top of it,
or maybe depending what type it is.
So and the reason we're going with that, it's much more cost effective. The wheels will allow us to drag this somewhere to dump out the stuff because of our heels, and it just makes more sense for us. So when we look at a project to make our property better, that's kind of how we look at it. How do we make this work better for us? So the barrels don't really make sense for us because it would be really hard to move it if we wanted to dump it without having one of us get in there and pull out this nasty stuff, which we really don't want to do because we know it's going to be disgusting. Right. How do we do it where we don't really have to do that? And the trash can, a good strong trash can, not a cheap one, that's been a struggle.
It is. It's hard to find
good trash
cans. Good trash can anymore. I found one the other day, but for $140, I was like, no. But then you find, oh, look here. Here's a $20 one that's not going to last a week. Like something in between.
Right. The wheels, we have to have something that's going to be able to handle hitting a rock and not busting a wheel.
Or falling apart.
That's less than what it is. Pick up all this nasty fermented green stuff out of the yard. So that's how we kind of approach this cost analysis thing. We look at what's the project. This is something we really want to do. We think it's going to be really good for our property. It's going to be good for all of our trees, give it good health, increase our soil health. It's going to be something we can do right now to help.
Yeah.
And how do we do it effectively without causing issues and easier for us long term? And it's also cost effective. And this is what we came up with the solution. If you have a better idea, leave it in the comments below. We would love to hear them because we are open to any other suggestions. This is just what we came up with. And so cost analysis is super important. Make sure you're looking at that. We also looked at rain barrels. But again, the problem was moving them. And the spigot. So here's my issue with the spigot. Y'all could tell me if you're crazy because
most people won't call them that though. Most people call them spigots where they're from. But we always call them spigots.
It's a spigot.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's the accent. So our spigot, my thought is when you put this green stuff in it and it just starts to break down and pull all the nutrients, when you go to turn it, it's only going to clog it up. And even if you put like a filter around the back half of it, it's going to be very hard
to keep it clean. Yeah.
Like I even thought about putting like a box net like they do on Gold Rush around it, but still that box net is going to need to be cleaned too. Mm-hmm. I just want to keep this as easy as possible. To me, it's just going to create more work in the long run.
Yeah.
But any suggestions? I'd love to hear them. Okay. You've evaluated, you've made your changes. Now you're going to put it into play. And you're going to fill these holes. Now you need to reevaluate it again like you did before. And make sure it's working the way you need it to. Right. Make sure you didn't miss anything.
Right. To make sure that it's actually going to work. You know where it's at.
Everybody knows how to use it.
Exactly. That's a great one there. Because if she puts it into play, where'd you put this? How'd I use this? That's a good It's a good one there because I
Make
have to know how
sure
to
the
use it
stuff
too.
is open. Like, make sure that the gauze needs to stay in its plastic wrap,
Mm-hmm.
because especially if you have like the sterile gauzes, we have some that are already sterile in their package, so they got to stay. But the wrap needs to be out of its plastic,
Right.
so have that ready to go. Scissors near it so you could cut all of these things. Anybody who says you only need one pair of scissors in your house is insane. I will argue with you all day long. They told me I was nuts once because I was like, no, I have a pair of scissors in every room of the
That's pretty
house.
true.
And some of them have more than one pair of scissors in that room. And they looked at me like I had two heads. I was like, I use scissors for everything. I have scissors in my basement. I have scissors outside. I have scissors in my garden bag.
Yep.
And we use all of them.
Use them all the time.
We have scissors. We have a couple pair on the refrigerator beside of the door because how, I mean, I don't know. Do y'all not need to have scissors to open stuff? Like, hey, grab me a pair of scissors or something. Like, we need them all the time.
Yeah, we do. We use them a lot.
So it just makes the most amount of sense to me just to have them handy and have everything that you need to make sure what you're doing works. Because what you don't want to have happen is you're in an emergency situation like we were, where we found this massive hole that really made us realize just how unprepared we were, right, and not actually have all the tools you need to do it.
Yeah.
Because if that would have even crossed my mind to do what they did, so much time and effort could have been saved.
Yeah.
But it didn't even cross my mind. I was not. And I'm pretty level-headed in most situations. I just run through and go and do.
Yeah.
But it wasn't there. It is now. It's there now. Forethought. But you can't go backwards. You only go forwards, and we learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
And so what do you think the most important part of finding the holes and fixing the holes in the homestead are in your preps?
You got to think about the weird situation.
You do.
Because we could even go back to when our well pump went out. Mm-hmm. And we noticed our water preps weren't on cue then, you know.
We were pretty good, though.
We were, but there were some things we thought we could do better.
There were things we needed better. We realized we wanted an outdoor shower. We wanted to be able to wash clothes outside, things like that.
Which things we're working toward, hopefully, this year. But, you know, stuff like that. You got to think of those weird scenarios. You can sort of say, oh, you think about all the doomsday prepping scenarios, you know. But in all honesty,
these are everyday scenarios.
It is water, you know, an emergency, blood everywhere, you know, just a simple thing, keeping care of your garden, you know, making a process better there. You just got to think through some different scenarios and, you know, how can I make this better? How can I make it easier, make it quicker in some instances, or just improve the overall quality?
Yeah, I agree with that.
How about you?
Reevaluate. I said it a lot. Reevaluating is so important. And while you're doing the project, you could just be thinking, how can I do this better? How can I shave off a few minutes of my time? Because we're not perfect. We don't do anything perfect. There's always somebody who knows something better than you, and we would be the first people to admit there's a lot of people out there who know a lot more than we do.
Right.
But what we're really good at, and what our superpower is
processes.
We put a process into place, buddy.
Yeah.
We can make it happen, and I'll find the holes in it.
Yeah.
Aaron might not be as good at identifying the issues. He's so good at following the process. So if he knows what to do, he'll follow it almost better than I will. Almost. But I'm the one who could find the holes and the problems and the issues and the future issues. And I guess that's my special superpower. And I'm constantly reevaluating, how do I make this better? How do I make this go faster? So being that process-driven mind, it just really helps keep us forward and going.
And we use these type of things when we're working on the side businesses as well.
We do this at home. I do this for
Yeah,
the house.
yeah. I mean,
You will know, like my cleaning schedule is a process, and I do it a certain way. And Aaron might look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm like, I need to get this back half done so that the floor is dry for when you need to walk through it, and then I do the other side. And he's like,
yeah,
"Oh, okay, it makes sense."
yeah. So, what are some of your holes in your preps that you're trying to feel right now? Or have you been thinking about those? Leave some of that below in the comments. What you're doing as well. Us, it's going to be working on, like we said, medical, probably the quickest.
Yeah, that's got to be done pretty fast.
Of getting it ready. But if you got any other comments, anything you want to hear in a future episode, you can leave that down below or send it to thecannycouple@yahoo.com. Make sure to go and check out our link tree, which has links to all of our other content and all the other social media sites that we're on. And if there's one that you think we should be on, let us know that as well.
And as always, thank you for joining us on Rural Reliance with the Canny Couple, where we work hard, live simple, and enjoy life. Have a wonderful day.